This podcast is supported in part by Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization that advocates for ideas, policies, and values to build a stronger North Carolina, one that works for all of its people as a strong, diverse, multiracial democracy. Welcome to the Foxfire Dispatch. This week we have Gina talking with Dalton George, who is the Mayor Pro Tem of Boone, and he is running for mayor in 2025. He is 26 years old, an organizer and policy wonk at heart. I think this conversation will show. So without further ado, I hope y'all enjoy.
Thanks for having me. I don't want to steal the intro from you, but we've been dealing with technical difficulties. Also, I wanted to say, I was thinking as we were getting back on this call, I was like, man, one of the first things I need to talk about is how the reason that you're interviewing me is because I listened to an episode and you talked about Wilco, and I was like, I love Wilco. It's one of my favorite bands of all time. And then you were like, come on the show, let's talk Wilco and anything else. So
Yes,
I'm here.
yes. I want to hear your Wilco journey. Mine starts with a ghost is actually starts with Some of Yankee Hotel.
Yeah.
Heavy Metal Drummer is the song that got me because of WNCW, who played
Wow.
Wilco all the time. And I was, 13, listening to whatever music was on public radio and found out about Wilco and then got obsessed during A Ghost is Born. And it's been an obsession since then.
Weird. We're kindred spirits. So I saw them for the first time live recently, like just a couple of months ago
Oh my
on that
God.
tour. Where did you see them at? Where did you see them in Nashville? Because they did an Nashville date, and then but they did a Charlotte date, and I saw them in Charlotte.
So the first time that I saw them was Thomas Wolfe in '05.
Wow, you're a Wilco vet. I'm so
Yeah,
jealous.
I've seen them a lot of times. Yeah.
And we're kindred spirits immediately because I was like, when I was going on, I was like, man, if I'm going to talk about Wilco to Gina, like I need a good Wilco take. And I I like Yankee a lot. That to me is like nearly a perfect album in the sense no skips, just perfection. But A Ghost is Born is like my favorite Wilco album of all time, and maybe my like top three albums of all time to me. That is just
Yeah.
so good.
I never get that take. I feel very connected to that album because of the age that I was, I think, probably when it came out.
Yeah.
But people are always like, and yes, Yankee Hotel for sure. But
Yeah.
A Ghost is Born is like very close to my heart.
I lost my voice when I saw them live for the first time, screaming, please play Theologians. Like I genuinely could not talk in the car because Theologians is an incredible song. They did do Hummingbird live, which is incredible, but like Theologians to me is just, oh my God, that is peak Wilco.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I was just like, Theologians, please. And they did not play Theologians. So if you're listening to this podcast, Jeff Tweedy, hello. I was
Hello.
the guy screaming Theologians at you, probably obnoxiously.
I love that take that it's like peak Wilco because it really is. It really is like the center of, I think, coming from that Uncle Tupelo stuff. Like A Ghost is Born is just this like mid road of what Wilco was and then would be.
Yeah.
And Theologians really like illustrates that in a cool way.
Yeah. No, that's so eloquently put. I struggle a lot. You're another elected official, so you'll probably really be a kindred spirit. It's like, nowadays everybody's like, oh, to be better on Instagram, you need to put a song on your post and whatever. And like Doc Watson's good. I live in Boone. Doc Watson has a lot of instrumental stuff that is pretty flexible. I always lean into that because I like Doc. But
Yeah.
I love Wilco and Pavement. Those are like two of my favorite bands, right? Top three bands. And it's like, how do you put Pavement on a town post?
Yeah.
And like I'll be like looking at the Genius because nobody knows what a Pavement lyric is. I mean, it's just random words
Yes.
that you find meaning in. And it's like, oh, he's talking about like, harness your hopes is that famous line about killing your parents and roast them on a
Yes.
spit. So it's like, yeah, I'm probably not going to put harness on my town page, but
Correct.
what
It would
Pavement
work for a
song?
very specific demographic, me included.
Right,
But
right.
there's not many of us, probably.
And it's a struggle, because it's like music's so important. And, if I'm doing a launch, I'm like, I want to play some like Pavement and Wilco. Wilco's better, I think. Like you put on California Stars, the vibes are up. It doesn't matter who you are. If you
People are into
didn't
it.
like California Stars,
Yeah.
people are into it. They're like, what is this? But
Yeah.
it's a struggle in playing my music and like reflecting me while
Agreed.
campaigning or politicking.
I lean into Doc a lot too. I have a lot of like reels with bluegrass because I identify with it. It's part of the region where we live. You know, it's very Henderson County, it's very Western North Carolina. Um, and I'll put like some Carter family, like I'll like do my own bluegrass journey sometimes and be like, this is what I love as like the core of what became Americana. And
Yeah.
that's why I love it. I just was recording through an intersection where we just got a new stoplight and I was going to put it on my Instagram. And I was listening to Leonard Cohen like super loud. And I was like, nobody's going to vibe with this. Like, nobody's going to, this is so depressing for other people. I'm into it, but people are going to be like, that girl is really sad. So I shouldn't put it on the internet.
That is so real. That is like, I feel like I've had that exact thought when I'm like, oh, this is a song I want to put on my story. And it's just like probably not. You probably need to keep that in the drafts, go on private mode on Spotify. Um, you know, I like again, we're pampered. Bluegrass is a great genre, and I feel like it's just such a jam genre. You know, you put it on in the background, it's incredible. It's good to play. And we're in the bluegrass part of the state.
Yeah.
Do you know there's a Doc Watson story I have being the Boone elected official.
Tell it.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the famous band that Doc Watson discovered in downtown Boone.
Tell us.
So there's a band. I don't actually want to spoil it. So basically, there's a
Okay.
band that's busking. I've talked to the lead singer and founder. He's a constant member throughout this group. Legendary bluegrass band. I'll tell you the end of the story, but they're busking on July 5th, like 30 some years ago, probably plus, right around there. And they're very hungover. They had just spent the 4th of July in Todd at a friend's like cabin, getting really drunk and swimming in the river. That was what they were doing, shooting off fireworks, being like really irresponsible, getting into wildness. Lead singer's like, yeah, I remember that day because I remember how hungover I was from the 4th. And they had like very little money to their name. They end up making it over to downtown Boone on King Street and busking to make a little bit of money and figure out where to go next. And this woman passes by, she comes back, she's like stands there and listens. She's like kind of like just your average gal, right? She's like sitting there listening and kind of nodding along. And then she walks off and she comes back with this old blind guy. And the old blind guy, of course, is Doc Watson at this point. It was Doc Watson's daughter. And they both sit there listening. And at this point, the band still doesn't really recognize, you know, they're like hungover, they're whatever. They know Doc Watson, they know he's a legend, but who thinks Doc Watson's just going to approach and listen to you busk?
Sure.
And they get done after like 2 or 3 songs, and Doc's like, "Boys, that was like some of the prettiest picking I've ever heard." And I'm putting on Merlefest. I want you guys to come play at Merlefest. It was their first big break.
Oh my God.
That band was Old Crow Medicine Show.
Amazing.
Which
Amazing.
so Boone gave the country and the state Wagon Wheel. And anytime anybody's ever singing Wagon Wheel, I'm like, look, that is a Boone contribution. That's a Doc Watson, you know, butterfly effect. When you're hearing that, if I die in
Man,
Raleigh, I'll die free. That's a Boone contribution to state culture right there.
that is a story that I bet you told 100 times a day in like 2008.
Yeah,
I
no,
feel like
exactly.
that song was just everywhere.
And
That
that
is
is why
so
I'm anti
cool.
Darius Rucker version too. If you put on the Darius Rucker version, get it out of here. I'm sorry, Darius Rucker.
Hot takes with Dalton. Um, yeah, I think probably everybody has like, or at least all of us in Western North Carolina probably have like some connection with that song, right? Like that is a regional anthem.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that that story was behind it. That makes so much sense to me. That's so
I will
cool.
say I'm really poorly traveled talking about Wagon Wheel and like, you know, as I've gotten a little bit older and like gotten a job where, you know, it gives me the flexibility to travel and like a little bit of financial I guess flexibility. I was out in Arizona for the new year. This was this new year going into 2025. And my buddy is in the Air Force out there. He's at a base right outside of Phoenix. So I went out to him and we went out to this cowboy bar. You know, we were having drinks. It's the new year. And and he's also from North Carolina. And Wagon Wheel comes on in this crowded, stuffy, like Phoenix cowboy bar. And, like I swear, I could have like cried. It was just being that far from home. I was like, this is actually about to kill me. Like I can't handle the emotional impact this is having on my being. Singing Wagon Wheel, thousands of miles away from home.
Yes, that is how I felt. So I feel like Wagon Wheel got worn out, right? Like we got it got overplayed and we got tired of it and used to it. The first time that I heard it after Helene, I broke down. I was
Yeah.
like, this song like means that much to me. It has all of these years of memories of like playing in the woods and getting in the water and going to house parties and campfires and whatever. We're all to this song.
Yeah.
And it's so like, yeah, so attached to our home base.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Johnson City, Cumberland Gap, that's like a very, I mean, obviously Tennessee side, but that's like Western
Yes.
North Carolina. I mean, Johnson City's like one of the nearest towns, you know what I mean? I go to Johnson City to go to big box stores, which
Yeah.
also I do have a bone to pick with you Henderson folks. I was talking to
Okay.
Preston about
What you
this.
got?
I was driving and I called Preston, you know, wanted to chat with him about whatever we chat about. And I was like, yeah, I have to go to Winston today. He's like, why do you have to go to Winston? I had to go get measured for a suit. And the nearest store that would do that, and like for this groomsman, I'm a groomsman in a wedding, was in Winston's hour and a half. I was like, do you not relate to that? He's like, bro, like I could just go into Asheville. Like, I cannot believe you're driving an hour and a half. And
Yeah.
so I have a bone to pick with you Henderson folks because
Yeah.
we have like nothing in Boone in the way of like places to buy clothes or go, like there's no Target, which I don't even like Target, but
Huh.
um, you know, it's a hot button. You got to drive like an hour to get to a Target.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about this because this is so funny to think about like the way that each of our like mini regions has grown and progressed. So
Yeah.
Winston-Salem is the closest place to you to do shopping like that?
Uh, Kind of. It's like Boone's in like the perfect. So if I'm going to the airport, right? Like
Yeah.
Boone is like the perfect place to where every airport that's usable is like 2 hours for me. Like PTI is basically the same distance as Charlotte, as
Oh,
is Asheville, as is Tri-Cities in Tennessee. So it's like I have to drive 2 hours regardless. So it's kind of that way with all these big metro areas. Hickory's getting there, but that's still like an hour for us.
okay.
Um, so yeah, like it's an interesting vibe in that way. Like we have a Boone Mall and it is like there's running jokes about how bad Boone Mall is. It's kind of funny. Like one time an App State student posted like a video of Mall of America with like the pools and like the vaulted ceilings and like captioned it like Boone Mall, North Carolina, and it just like blew up here because it was just there's like three stores and it like floods every time it rains like 2 inches. The parking lot is underwater. There's like pool party days at Boone Mall parking lot.
But is there a want for more like retail stuff or are you headed that way or
I mean, I don't know. I think like you know, Boone's in this weird place where redevelopment is definitely coming, but we just don't really have like the space or like you know, we're 6 square miles. The infrastructure is pretty limited, and Boone's like the only real municipality in Watauga County. Like Blowing Rock's a resort town, Seven Devils is a resort town, Beach Mountain's a resort town. So like we're the only town in Watauga County that people like live and work year round and exist. So it's like we have limited space in that way. Resort towns aren't putting in any store that like that. They're putting in like candle shops where you pay like
right?
$40 to walk in, or like you know, which are cool. I mean, it all feels a niche, but um, I mean, I don't think so. And you probably deal with this a lot in your role as an elected, but people think that we're like the arbiters of what business comes, and you know, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna introduce the Target resolution and bring a Target. And like that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Which is yeah. One time I had this person, and we can commiserate over this. This is so interesting to talk about local electeds, but there was a new development going in. Somebody said, "Oh my God, you know, what is the town council doing? We don't even have a decent pizza place in town." They were like ribbing us, and just you know, one, we don't pick what goes in places, but it's like the irony of like, do you expect like pizza makers to come in like we're a kingdom and they're like
Right.
serfs and they like give us a slice of pie and we're like, oh, this is terrible. Be gone out of my council chambers. Like, bring
Okay,
me a
I feel
better
like our
one.
jobs would be a lot cooler if they were that.
Yes.
I I mean, not to sound like I embrace dictatorships, but if democratically elected officials could decide on good pizza places, that could be a little more fun.
Yeah, I think we'd be better off. We don't have a good Chinese food restaurant in town, so like I'd love to court that. I'm sorry if there's an owner listening that runs one of the two
Yeah, I was like, do you have
Chinese.
any?
We have two. I mean, they're fine. I just like you know, they could be better. We need like a good Chinese food restaurant in town desperately.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll talk to my pizza people.
Yeah. We'll
And
exchange numbers and
yeah, we'll
they'll bring
swap.
an egg roll to council meeting and be like, is this sufficient to open in town?
Well, it is kind of comforting to hear, I guess, that this is like a universal thing, that people don't understand what is actually within the role of elected office.
Yeah.
And it's something that I care very deeply about, like, addressing, because I want people to engage. So to that end, you were talking about, you have town halls for folks.
Yeah. Yeah,
How
I've
are
been
those
I've been
going?
doing like a town hall series. It's been like a month since I've done it since announcing reelection because that's been a lot of work and obviously like trying to pivot into that mode. But yeah, and really just like it's in bars, it's at churches, it's at restaurants, and I kind of just sit up and field questions. And a lot of it for me is just getting out there and trying to show that local government is doing something more accessible. We're at this moment, I beat this drum all the time, but everybody hates politics right now. Like every regular person hates politics right now, and reconciling being in politics and kind of showing that, like, you and me, like Gina and Dalton live here. We shop at the same grocery store. Like we don't get to retire to our mansion after we vote, and like not we're in traffic. When people complain about traffic in Hendersonville, like you're there with them, right? Like
Yeah.
walkability benefits you, and so I think it's trying to like be a human in that way and like not have all the answers necessarily, but just like be there to fill questions. And also I hate the word educate in the sense because, like, people's concerns are legitimate. It's not necessarily that I'm like educating them, but folks are like, oh, why haven't you done rent control in town yet?
Yeah.
And the General Assembly took away our ability. And I have to go out there and make sure that I'm letting people know that, or else at the end of the day, they think, oh, well, Dalton's letting us down. Dalton's not doing this. Dalton's not doing that. And so it's like helped me a little bit feel better about the political process, just having those conversations. And I've not had anybody that's like, comes in and just like throws tomatoes at me. Here's like, you suck. Like, I mean, I've had people I think that come in hot with some like really, in-depth questions, and I appreciate that. And it's been fun. I think the only negative, it kind of, I don't want to say negative, but being in a university community is so interesting because you have people that are getting a poli-sci degree or getting a planning degree that also have like never came to a public meeting and like
Mm.
still are, I think, grappling with like what preemption means. So like at a couple, you'll have like a planning student that comes and is like, oh, you just need to like bike lane King Street. And it's like, King Street's owned by the state of North Carolina, my friend. Like, it's like, those nuances aren't really translated, I think, in like the abstract classroom. And so it's even tougher because you'll meet probably once a month a student that's like, if I had your job, I'd fix the town tomorrow. And I'm like, dude, come to a meeting
Yeah.
and get on a planning board. Like, please do.
Yes.
Don't just armchair quarterback, right? Like you could do
Yes.
something.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that accessibility that you offer is so great in that it encourages the people who have that interest level to put that interest level into an engaged space and offer to them, like, yeah, what you're saying is a great idea. Here's why it's difficult to implement, or here are the
Right.
roadblocks that we're facing. What do you think we should do from here?
Right. Yeah. And our young people too, I think like and I say this as a student, like when I was a student, and I am a young person, I guess too. Not like I even though some people think I've gotten old on them. I'm 26. I'm still spry. I'm still spry. But like I guess when I was a student, I was working on tenant rights stuff and going before the town council and like telling them to adopt like pro tenant ordinances, and like some got adopted, some didn't. I ran a campaign that got Josh Stein's attention on like fraud in the rental market. And it's like you can do that stuff and you can get involved and you can get skin in the game. And I didn't go to a lot of my classes in college. I was like a pretty poor student, but because I was doing that type of stuff, and I feel like I got a better education as a result of doing that and not just focusing on the classroom all the time. And I always think of this Ralph Nader quote, like I love Ralph Nader, and it's you go into a chemistry classroom and you see the equipment that's necessary to see chemistry in action, but you go into like a civics classroom or a politics classroom or a public admin or planning classroom, and their whole world they could go out and go to a planning meeting and participate in this way, and our educators aren't doing a good job of like encouraging them to do that. And I really like that attitude towards public service and politics generally is like, why, this is a free platform. You can come and do a public comment. You can engage with it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so powerful when people do it. Like when people start to realize that, like, they not only have the authority to, but like are the driving motivation behind the changes that happen in their community. That is like
Yeah.
the coolest part of being in this role to me. and
Right.
it's so cool to see somebody else, you know, value that and center that, because I think it's easy to get in the weeds of doing the day to day.
Absolutely. I'm curious too, like as we talk about that, like do you have so in your meetings, how often would you say you have like an audience? Like do you have meetings sometimes where like nobody's in the audience?
Sometimes what generally happens is that people come for presentations. They come for comment and presentations that are in the front of the agenda. And then by the time, sometimes they'll stay through public hearing. And then by the time we're doing like new business beyond public hearings, they're gone. And it's like city staff and a reporter
Yeah.
and maybe like two people who show up to every meeting. But usually there are a good handful, and it depends on the length. What about for
Yeah.
y'all?
No, exact same situation. And like I like one to one. That's exactly how I would describe it. And I always think it's the thing I always tell people is like not that we're doing anything shady when there's nobody in the audience. Like I don't want to give that impression because it is recorded. But when there's an audience, like I can just feel the board like do a better job. I don't know how to explain it. Like there's like, because there's somebody looking, because there's an audience and like maybe it's like a form of theater, I guess, if you want to like to I guess look at it from one lens, but also it's like I do think government just works better when there are people in the audience watching it. I think
Yeah,
they're more thoughtful generally. I think people say what they're thinking because like it is kind of like when there's nobody in the audience but city staff, you're just kind of like, okay, let's vote and move this along. And not that you're not thinking or weighing things, but I don't think you're trying to like articulate or be as thoughtful because it's just like it's just us. Like I'm not gonna give this long-winded thing about why the General Assembly could be a lot better and is terrible right now to four
yeah,
people that know that.
yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Do you ever like ask a question that you know the answer to make someone else have to answer it? Like sometimes I'll do that to developers. Like I'll be like, "Hey,
Yes.
what did the traffic impact analysis say about one entrance?"
Yeah. No, I think that's one of my it's one of my favorite moves. I think you could walk people down. And also it's just like the reality too is it's in the packet. Like I've found a lot of times, especially in these developments, like when neighbors have concerns or there's like some sort of controversy and people are like really upset about one thing that maybe is answered in the packet. And it's like, but they're not going to read 400 pages, right? Like they're not
Yeah.
going to dive into that. And so like asking that question and just getting it out there, I think is so important. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's like there's like different types of council members. There's like the packet wizards that I think know everything and just like ready to like vote. And then I think there's the people that try to tease it out in the meeting. And then there's probably the people that just show up and have not read it. I mean, we all know those electeds as well.
We do.
Um, but it's like I do think there's a balance where sometimes you know the packet really well, but then to the public, if you're just like ready to go, it looks like you're not really governing. So it's kind of
Yes.
like it's tricky.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Um, do you want to like stump a little while you're here? You're running for mayor.
Yeah, I am. I announced that I was running not too long ago. Everybody in the state that's running for municipals announced before me. I was kind of like, like a real FOMO thing. Like, am I met? Like, what am I doing wrong? I don't know. Like, I guess it's a story of being elected. Is like you look across the state and you're like, am I a bum? Like, what am I doing? And so yeah, I announced later than most people, later than some House reps that are running in 26, later than
Yeah.
Wiley Nickel, who's running for Senate.
Yeah, he's
But
been running for months already.
running for months, and I just got into the mayor race. Dalton George has entered the field. I am currently the mayor pro tem, and I know that a lot of, I don't want to speak for you, obviously, you're a council member, you have to get along with your mayor. I feel like a lot of council members do not get along well with their mayor. Like, I feel like there is a innate tension between those two things in the state.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay.
I don't know. I think and I'm not necessarily even saying that about our mayor, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not, but I do think that it's a weird role. Like, you can't vote, you can't do anything. So, like, as mayor pro tem, the people that like know a lot about government, like, you're giving up your vote, you're giving up some power if you become mayor. Like, you're kind of taking a step back in that way.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting. I guess the main reason I want to run is I do view Boone as kind of this regional leader. I think a lot of people look to Boone as kind of this progressive town in Appalachia that is doing things and is ambitious and taking things on. And I don't think we've had a mayor that's like beat that drum and got out and kind of worked with the state, met electeds across the state, shared information, looked to kind of position the town in that way. And also like get more funding from the General Assembly. Like we rarely get funding from the General Assembly. When the governor comes to town, the governor doesn't message local electeds here at all. Like, sorry, Josh Stein, your chief of staff still owes me a phone call, by the way.
Ooh,
But
get your people to call Boone.
exactly, like what? But
Yeah.
all that's to say, but then you look at somebody like Preston, who's somebody that we both admire, and like he's done such a good job, I think, of positioning Fletcher as this, this town to be recognized, and like
Yeah.
his leadership has really like flown into other parts of the state. And obviously, I think my style would be different, but I think like Boone's ready for that, and also like sports analogies are lame, but it's like the mayor's like the point guard. And I think if you really get along with your council and you set the tempo and you're willing to kind of like lead in that way and really make sure you're giving other people good looks and you're not just the ribbon cutting machine and like you're making sure your council's included, that you can keep a lot of that influence and ability to affect change even without a vote. But it's all about relationships. And so I
Okay.
kind of want that challenge.
Learned a lot about what a point guard does just now. No frame of reference.
I'm a terrible basketball player. But
Okay.
it's a sports analogy, I
Well,
guess.
you're not running for that. I bet that you'd be a great mayor.
Yeah,
Um,
not a good point guard.
and I like the framing, right, of like the mayoral role being about positioning your community within a state where it really depends on your state government
Right.
to get those funds and to get support and to be able to pass legislation. And a lot of municipalities are looking at lobbying because the General Assembly is tricky right now, and
Yeah.
we're all working through a lot. So I really appreciate that framing and that focus.
Well, and you and I too were so similar in the towns that we represent because we're represented by, excuse me, by Republicans at like every rung of the ladder, with
Yeah.
the exception of governor. Like I'm sure your state house reps are Republican, your state senators are Republican, like
Yeah.
and so county commissioners probably are, right? And
Correct.
same with me. And it's like, the only way we can really get support, because unfortunately the way the General Assembly is governing is like if you're not a town that votes for them, they don't believe in getting you money. Like, if
Yes.
you're criticizing them, they don't believe in helping you. And so like you've got to like position yourself. You've got to get a good relationship with the governor. You've got to be working, and using whatever influence you can to like bring back some money for your community and like make sure it's not just getting whooped the whole time by the General Assembly, which is the case for so many of our towns.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a challenge. I'm like, I'm ready to try it. I think the people of the town have enjoyed, the work I've put in, and it's like, hey, and now you can run on a record, which is cool. Like I didn't do a platform page because I was like, I've got 4 years of policy under my belt, and I think it's better to say, this is what I've done. This is something that you benefit from right now that is impressive, and that should show what I'm going to do better than me making a ton of promises. Right? Is like, look at what I've done.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think, leveraging that is also a future promise, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
what I've engaged in. This is what you can expect from me in the future. Thank you for like
Yeah.
being willing to share and dig into it. I think it's so important for people to see that like there are real life people behind the policies that are affecting them, and that we do run up against these walls in the General Assembly, and
Yeah.
we are a Dillon state, and all of these pieces really do matter. And like, here's why all politics are local, and why we have to show up for each other. You're doing a great job of illustrating all the things that I try to scream about. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I think like to that point of showing up for each other, one thing I really reflect on a lot, and this isn't a dig at anybody that comes from a different background, but and I don't know much about your background, but a lot of the people I see in elected office across the state have family connections. I mean, you even look at, our governor, Rachel Hunt, these folks, like they do come from political families that really carved a path. I mean, Josh Stein's dad was this legendary attorney, right? The civil
Yeah.
rights attorney. And other local electeds across the state who were incredible, like their family was involved in the towns that they were in. Like there's this kind of like political legacy they're able to tap into. me, I just kind of figured the shit out. Excuse my language. Like that was just out of like necessity and me wanting to just try to do a little bit of good. And so, when I meet other local electeds, especially the ones that share that kind of background, I'm like, I will give you any secret sauce, any
Yes.
ordinance I've done. Like, let me let you be successful because it's daunting. And like, coming from a family like if you ask I tell people this all the time, but if you ask my dad what I did, he'd be like, I really don't know. Like my dad summarizes my work as like Dalton goes out and talks to people. And that's,
I love that.
it's yeah, it's cute. I'm like, and I've started saying that a lot because it's true. Like that's his friends are like, oh, what does your son do? And he's like, I don't just kind of talks to people. I don't really know. But
You should make
um
that your campaign slogan.
he
That's
just talks to people.
adorable.
It is. And it's like, but and it can kind of get lonely in that way, right? Like in the sense that it's not like, not that I don't get supported by my family, but that, it's not like it's not like my dad was like, well, when I was mayor of Boone, right, Dalton, this is what I did, right? Or
Right.
I've got Josh Stone's number because he and I worked in the assembly together. Like none of that, right?
Right.
It's just me. And so, meeting other local electeds with similar backgrounds, I'm just like, yeah, like I feel like we really have to stick together and recognize like this is a new path we're carving out in North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah. Could not agree more. Am super grateful for it. I'm curious about when you started running, what support looked and felt like for you. I feel like that's such a huge part of like people's decision to run and to stay in races. Um, was there like why did you start? Or like did somebody talk you into it? Did you just have an idea? Did you
Yeah,
network?
for me it was like I had always joked about running for office one day, but it was kind of like a tongue in cheek. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be the mayor of Winston-Salem, which like I didn't even grow up in Winston-Salem. I grew up like in a rural town outside of it, but it was kind of like that was like the big city, so it was kind of a joke. But I never really like genuinely thought about running, especially like so young. I mean, at that point in my life, like I was like, oh, I want to like graduate and go to law school or something, like most people in politics, right? Like that was kind of the path I was thinking about. And I started doing that tenant organizing mainly because I was like very upset with the rental situation in town because I didn't have a ton of money as a first gen college student and getting nickel and dime for fees or paying $100 for an application fee, like I would have to skip a meal, over stuff like that. And it just kind of got me starting to think about, well, who's responsible for this beyond just the landlords? Like, how can we really go to bat and fight this? And so started talking to my neighbors. That kind of evolved. I went before the town council on a couple of things. I started this group called Boone Fair Housing, and we passed a number of resolutions and ordinances, put some pressure on the attorney general, who ended up never investigating, but did like send an attorney up here and kind of like a thing. That was a weird time of my life, and then did like a lot of eviction protection. I actually ended up like getting threatened with a lawsuit by some property managers for practicing law without a license, allegedly. But it didn't like go anywhere. It was just a letter like, hey, we're gonna sue you if you keep doing this. But
Hey, that's good.
all of that's, yeah, it was good work. And like it was a real learning experience and a learning by doing. Like I will always tell people like I'm not the smartest guy you will ever meet. Like I actually think I'm like incredibly average in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I was just like, I'm gonna ram my head into this wall and read ordinance and try to understand because I like the David versus Goliath dynamic. I like live for that. And so I was doing all that, doing eviction protection, helping, as many folks as I could. And there's actually this one woman that I'd helped. She was on fixed income, Social Security, and living with mold in her apartment. I got her some help. And she was like, you should run for something. And at the time, I was like, I mentioned that to somebody, and they were like, oh, yeah, you should run for something. A lot of these people had helped in my tenant work. And around that time, I like started to really get the pieces together. And then there was a vacancy on town council. I applied for it, didn't get a single vote in support of it. And then another vacancy came up a couple months later, applied for that, got it unanimously, was on town council in 2021, and then ran in that same year and was elected to a 2-year term. Weird saga of my life.
Okay, so you were talking about all of your work with tenants and how that got you involved in local politics. Are there any specifics that you can talk about? Because housing rights are a perennial topic, and it often feels like our hands are tied because we are a landlord first state in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, One of the things we leaned into a lot was trying to expand the minimum housing code, specifically to make sure that, all of the things that we were seeing issues with, mold, lack of proper weatherization that was leading to units being really cold in the winter, all of these kind of deferred maintenance issues to make sure that like there was a minimum housing code in which it was very clear and accessible and was well advertised. That tenants could, you don't have to get an attorney, but you could actually go to your local planning department and say, hey, somebody's not meeting the standard of living that we've set. So will you go out there and look? And so inspectors would go out and look and find the landlord into compliance. And so that became like a real tool that we used. And people get really weird when it comes to code enforcement and things like that because it has been used historically to like hurt regular working people.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the education piece was like making it clear, well, no, planners are not police. So if somebody comes to your house and they go, let us inspect their planner and you don't want them there, you don't have to have them there, right? But ideally that the tenant is inviting this planner out to look at this property. And so we saw a lot of landlords get into compliance quickly. Another thing that, we wrote into ordinance that I was really proud of, and it's very timely with the aftermath of Helene was the requirement that landlords disclose if they're renting a complex in a floodplain and what floodplain it is it a 100-year, 50-year, whatever, and that as a mechanism to make sure that people are empowered to know how to plan accordingly.
Yes.
And there's fines that are levied. I actually was working with Theo out in Chapel Hill, making sure that they could do a similar ordinance because it's timely with what's going on across the state. But that was the two major things. It was really frustrating coming in as like a young person, like the student I was talking about earlier. And I was like, oh, we should do an application fee cap. We should do this and we should do that. And then realizing very quickly, well, we can't do that. And so I had to get creative and really use a code that probably the General Assembly doesn't intend to be used as like a pro tenant tool, but that is an incredible tenant tool that municipalities can use to really take on bad landlords.
That is incredible to hear. I've been checking in with Theo a little bit here and there
Yeah.
and all the folks that I know kind of in the central part of the state and watching them go through some version of what we all went through last year
Yeah.
has been a really eye-opening experience for, I think, people across the state and also people outside of the state to see like this is not one isolated thing that like holy shit there was a hurricane in the mountains. Like yes, that's true, and this is stuff that will continue to happen and we need to have tools in place to help people because
Right.
so many people were displaced during Helene that still don't have homes
Yep.
10 months later.
Yeah.
And it's just this constant, watching them go through it, I think has been re-traumatizing and also like kind of has made me feel like re-steeled in my resolve to do something
Yeah.
to make
No,
sure
absolutely.
we're not, dozing here.
It was, it was really tough. I think the one thing I think that is so important that we've learned is like being able to tell the story of what those impacts look like in terms of getting funding and everything. And what was so challenging for us in the West, and obviously not trying to compare, but that I was so happy to see that, the folks that are impacted still have cell service for the most part, still have the ability to say, this is what it looks like while it's happening.
Yes.
What was so weird, I shared this even on Appalachia, and I'm sure you had the same experience, is like we were without internet, we were without the ability to call people, we were without the ability to consume news or media. Like we had power for a number of days to even charge our devices. And like, then you get back online and you see all of the people that probably shouldn't be telling our story from all over, and mainly not from here. And I think about somebody like a Matt Von Swole, who I can't stand.
Mm.
And, obviously Asheville was hit hard, but like, dude was tweeting through the whole thing. And I wonder how, because it's like, as somebody that was in this situation and was going out and helping people and was in a leadership role, I couldn't even tell my family I was okay, my family off the mountain.
Yeah.
And so, the narrative very quickly, like the people that gobbled up all the social media space about Helene, I feel like we're the wrong people. And then, by the time people like you and me get back online, it's like, well, what the hell? Like, I'm reading things on Twitter saying that the town of Boone lost our water treatment, wastewater treatment plant. And those are decade-long infrastructure projects to rebuild. As I'm with the water treatment guys, thanking them for, 48 hours straight of work to get back online. And that's like
Wow.
so weird. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever have an experience that's that strange again. But what I'm saying is like seeing people like Theo being able to say, this is what's happening. We need to get people help. Communicating in that way is
Yes.
incredible. Like being
Yes.
in the driver's seat right off the bat.
Yes. Yes. And it has allowed us as their neighbors and as people who believe in mutual aid and who understand what it's like to like jump in the car, to share information, to
Yeah.
ensure that like people know when their communities are meeting, and having all of that awareness and ability in their corner is going to help them so much in the long term to overcome the narratives, which I don't know if this was your experience, and I certainly don't want to speak for you, but one of the hardest things in Helene recovery has been combating narratives.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not as bad as the interpersonal damage and the physical damage, but probably third in line has been
Yeah.
combating a narrative that like we don't need help, or that help isn't welcome here, or that people have been rejecting help when it's been offered.
Right.
Um, and it's just been a time suck, really, like an energy suck.
Yeah.
When we could be mucking out houses, we're sending emails.
Right.
And I don't want them to have to be living that experience.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And and so much of it was trying to sow this kind of distrust. Like, there's a Facebook post that went viral and Twitter and everybody covered it and it was right here in town. And you probably even saw it in your neck of the woods, it was everywhere. But about the Amish that built the small houses in a parking lot here in town.
I
And
did see that.
and it was cool. That's an incredible story. But then like I saw one headline and it was like a Facebook post, but it had like, something like 40,000 likes and, millions of views. And it was like the town told them to stop, but they wouldn't.
I
And it's
also
like,
saw that.
yeah. And
Yep.
that didn't happen.
Yep.
Like as somebody that works for the town of Boone, that is, second in charge of the entire governing body, like that just did not happen. And what they took this really positive story of, people traveling hundreds of miles to come build houses from, Pennsylvania, and then made it the government didn't want them to, but they did it anyways. And it's like it wasn't, I guess it wasn't enough to just say this was amazing that we're housing
Right.
people. Like we had to frame this narrative that goes along with everything else you're consuming. Government's inept, government got in the way.
Right.
And that was really troubling because it's like, damn, we can't even have positive stories without you twisting it.
That's absolutely the experience that I had here.
Yeah.
That I saw both of those stories that you just talked about for sure. The only thing that I cared about for many months was storm recovery, because we were, so deep in it. Like, what else are you gonna
Yeah.
talk about? So I was ending my campaign, and I had started it early, thank God, because we thought it
Yeah.
was going to be the year before. So I had been campaigning for 15 months by the time the
Wow.
storm came. Um, and it was just, I think as a region, we just kind of developed a disinterest in anything else. Like it
Yeah.
was the only thing that mattered to so many of us was making sure that our neighbors were okay. And I saw so little of that reflected in narratives that I read about us.
Everybody got into the mutual aid topic, and I feel like you and I are very similar, probably in a lot of ways on politics. And like, I believe in community, taking care of community. Don't get me wrong. Like, but then the narrative became, oh, the government would let us, all fail. Like, we take care of ourselves. And it's like, I think of the public works employees, and like, you probably saw this on town side of the firefighters that are doing swift water rescue, and the public works guys that are out, covered in mud, clearing out culverts and rebuilding and stabilizing roads. And like they work for the government, but they also live in this county. Like I met one public works dude that was working overtime and I was like, how are you? I was asking every staffer, how are you? Is your family okay? And he was like, I'm okay. A tree did fall on my house and I'm going to deal with that whenever I'm done giving him out of the town, on recovery work. And it's like, Jesus, dude, like, that is like heroism. And, he's there working on behalf of everybody in the town. And like, he's technically a government employee. He's also a community member. So like, I do, even though like, oh, we take care of ourselves, the government won't come. Like, I agree. The state, I think, could have done a lot more and still could. and the feds need to do a lot more, right? Like I don't think FEMA was perfect. I'll tell anybody that.
Yep.
Like FEMA
Yep.
left a lot of people through the cracks. But ultimately, like it was the local governments, it was regional governments, as well as community taking care of community, because we kind of we all live here, right?
Yeah.
Just because you are a firefighter doesn't mean you don't live in Watauga County, right?
Right.
Or that you're
Right.
suddenly not a part of broad recovery. And it was really weird to see that narrative even among people that are like well-meaning on the left, as far as like, oh, this kind of mutual aid, more like the anarchism take
Mhm.
that we see online. But it's like, yo, like local government's busting their tail, and I don't know, man. I'm not equipped to do swift water rescue. I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm not going to be able to mutual aid swift water rescue. Like,
Right.
that's not happening.
Right. And I think that is so um it's so topical when
Right.
you get elected that I just keep telling people like I didn't get like a manual. Like I don't like become the government now.
Right.
Like there's no delineation there between the people who serve on your local government and the people that are your neighbors that do mutual aid, that show up and organize. It's just it's just a role shift. And I have been thinking a lot about like what you do as an anti-establishment or a populist candidate, right? Like thinking about like Mom Donnie and Bernie, like what do you do when you cross the threshold into being the government? When
Yeah.
you have operated in this universe of like we take care of us because other people won't. And I think that Helene brought a lot of that out in people, that Appalachia has this like resourcefulness and isolationism really because of how rural we can be.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of an interesting interpersonal case study in like how we treat each other and how insular we can get when the shit hits the fan and we're the only ones who know what we're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think I did some training of people that are running in 2025. I'm like doing some consulting work for down home, North Carolina, and they have a slate of candidates that's running, and they, wanted me to kind of come from the elected perspective as somebody that, like we were saying there earlier, does not have that political experience. That was one of the things I told them is like, once you're elected in your community, you don't really, the only training that you get, and this always blows people's mind, is an ethics training on how not to go to jail. That's pretty
Yes.
much it. And then they're like, welcome to government, baby. And let's, and maybe your staff guide you through the process. I mean, good town managers and city managers will
Yes.
absolutely, but like the only training that you're legally required to take and that you're given formally is an ethics training. And then it's like, there you go, Gina, run to Hendersonville. And it's like, that's crazy. I think that to your point, it's not like we have entered the halls of Congress and, we have staffers. Like people think that we've got like, you and I will forever say this, and people are gonna be like, oh, roll their eyes. But I do think being in local government, especially in towns, that are mid-sized, they're not quite big enough to have like all the resources in the world, but they're big enough to have big problems. And every small town has big problems, don't get me wrong. But you know what I mean? Like as far as you've got people online spreading narratives, you've got, all of these unique kind of issues that you're running, infrastructure projects, you have a water system, all of these things. And I think we have the hardest job out there as local electeds because you and we're our constituent services, we're our comms staffer, we're our policy staffer. There's nobody telling you how to vote when you go into a meeting. There's
Yeah.
nobody that's running your Instagram for you and writing press releases.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's researching policy for you and telling you should do this. We don't even, as local government, have lobbyists that really ever come to us. I mean, I tell people that all the time, like, and there are some lobbyists out there that are good that, the Sierra Club lobbies, right?
Yeah.
Like equality and sea lobbies, and they'll come to these legislators and say, do this for this issue. We don't even get that. We don't have people telling us what to do that way. It is
Right.
just us.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Hardest job.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, I really, are you a Parks and Rec fan? Did you
I've
watch that
watched,
show?
I listened to your episode talking about Parks and Rec and West Wing, and I'm a fan of both of those shows. I tend to, in the government world, I tend to like West Wing is my hope show, which
Yeah.
I know people are like, oh, that's like neo-lib or whatever. But I think Josh Lyman is so cool.
Yes.
I want to be Josh Lyman. That's kind of my attitude.
Who doesn't?
The
Um,
coolest.
He's the best. Yeah, but I think Parks and Rec does a really good job with local government issues because it is like
Yeah.
every day, every time that I walk into a council meeting, I'm like people caring loudly at me. And then I have to go think about like the weight
Yeah.
of what I was elected to represent and why how I vote matters. We're just having these like ethical debates and I'm so glad that I have a network now of folks like Preston is probably so sick of me calling him and being like, walk me through this one. Like, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm feeling. And he'll just
Yeah.
like, he's a really good reflective listener. Like, he won't ever give me advice other than like, here's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what I need because it just feels like so much.
And it is, and I think about, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this like publicly, but it is. I've really struggled with this balance of because you're talking about you going to a meeting, people are yelling, or you read these things about how everybody in government sucks, and your town is doing things poorly, and like there's this balance between having thick enough skin to be able to stay sane, which I think like genuinely like I actually am pretty sensitive. Like when it comes like I'll read a comment and it will like keep me up at night, like I'll feel bad about it and I need to get better about that. But it's like I also never want to get so prickly, so thin skinned, so interested in not taking concerns and comments, even sometimes if they aren't truthful or rooted in fact, seriously,
Mhm.
that I become like the politicians that I really can't stand. And like, I don't know, I see some of these people in Congress that just like don't listen to the public at all and are just totally checked out. And like I do wonder, like, are you like this cartoon villain, which I get like that's the easy way to paint it, or like are you just like you've just been pinged so many times that you've just put up this wall and you're like the public is wrong and I am right and I'm never going to listen. And so you're blocking out the good ideas too. And it's like, even in Little Boone, North Carolina, like balancing like my own mental health and not feeling like, everything I do is bad, right?
Yeah.
But then also wanting to listen to the public and co-govern with them, like that balance is really tricky because it is a lot. You're so right. And it's like, it's daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's also like the coolest thing. Like I feel like I yap about this constantly, but like you have an opinion about something that I can make a difference in?
Yeah.
Like, what a dream. Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, do sometimes people have opinions that I disagree with? Yeah, that's what community is.
Right.
That's what having a neighborhood is. That's okay. And we can like come to some agreement together.
Yeah. And it's like I think you're right. It's keeping that optimism and that like that hope and also like the core belief. And I think that maybe is where you can be in it in the long haul and still be good at government. Is like if you really do, the fundamental underpinning is like we are better when we co-govern, and there are ideas that come from the public that like, and there are blinders in government, and like we need to recognize that and try a little bit. There was a thing I did recently where this business owner came forward and had an issue with like fee schedule, and everybody just kind of said platitudes. We'd like small business, but they didn't really do anything about it. And I was like, dude, I want to sit down with you and try to solve the problem. And it's an issue that, there's state law and everything, and I don't want to delve into that because I know we only have so much time, but I ended up figuring out, hey, let's go to the General Assembly and just ask them to fix this. And so now there's a bill in the General Assembly that passed the House that basically me and our town attorney wrote that would benefit every small business in North Carolina. We're waiting on the Senate to do it. But it was because I was like, let's sit down and talk. Like everybody had said, this is the way it's been forever. It's preempted. We give up. Here's a platitude where we care about small business. And I was like, let's just take a crack at it. And this dude is a Republican. He's like well-known Republican. And when I announced I was running for mayor, he was like one of the people in the comments that was like, go get him. Like, you're the man for it. Because he like recognized that, I was willing to at least sit down and like everybody at that day is, and I served with a great council, and I think they were really trying to solve the problem. But it ultimately boiled down to we care about local business and we're going to look into it. And I was the one that was like, I want to meet with you and I want to really try to solve this and took the ball down the field. And obviously they supported me and, getting me and the attorney to write it and recommending it and all this. I mean, they helped me so much, but I think that is the difference is that core belief. Like we can fix these things if we
Yeah.
just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of times where I feel like this job is just not listening when someone says no to me.
Yeah. Well, I always joke, and people get tired of this, and like, actually, I haven't made this joke in a long time, but you know, Air Bud, the movie, right?
Yes.
Okay, being in a Dillon's Rule state, like we are creating Air Bud policy because the whole joke about a dog can't play basketball is there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. It's like so, and that is being progressive in local government. Like there's no rule, like
So
like
real.
me talking about protecting tenants. It's like I had to find this real loophole in minimum housing codes and like expand it to help tenants. It's not like I could write a resolution that said we're pro tenant now and get it done overnight. Like we had to find there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. And I always joke around and
Yes.
call it the Airbud rule of local government. And
I will be adopting that. Absolutely. And so will everyone I know.
it's,
I love
it's
that.
it's accurate.
Have
Um,
other municipalities taken up the minimum housing code idea?
yeah, and most municipalities have it. It's just like kind of covered in cobwebs and not used or communicated as like a pro tenant thing. And I know Chapel Hill's got a really good one. I ended up including mold in ours, which was kind of like a historic move to include mold as like a minimum housing issue because
Cool.
the Appalachian Mountains were like a rainforest. We get mold up here a lot. And I think like Durham was looking at using some of that, but like I do think it's the job on planning staff and the electeds. Like you do the minimum housing code, but you always communicate it. Like this is a tenant tool because like we believe that there's a standard of housing that if you're a renter in my town, you deserve. And if you don't get it, we're going to find the hell out of whoever is not giving it to you.
Yeah.
Um, and do it in tandem with things like education on like retaliatory evictions, where the state of North Carolina, even though we do hate tenants according to the General Assembly, like
Mhm.
if I go and file a complaint to a landlord and say you're not making a repair, you got to do this, and then they go to evict me the next day. There is case law that you don't really even have to get a lawyer. You go to the clerk of court and you prove, hey, look at this complaint I filed, look at this timing, and or the magistrate one, or really whoever, and they will get it sorted out for you because it's very clear it's retaliatory. But it's like those are the two pieces, and making sure people know, like, look, you might not get your lease renewed as well. That could be a risk for some folks, and unfortunately, North Carolina law is very silent about what that really means. And so there is an education piece that has to happen, but it's been really productive and rewarding, I think, to see the town be able to do a little something about it.
My wheels are turning so fast right now. This is like invaluable work that you're doing. I mean, it's
Hey,
just a constant conversation, especially in a regional housing crisis, that it's very helpful to hear somebody say something other than like, our hands are tied.
yeah. And like I think, a full court press on it, making it clear and really trying to make an example out of some bad complexes and bad faith kind of folks is it's key. So I mean we could definitely talk offline. There's a ton of policy tools. Actually, one thing you can't do, I'm getting really nerdy. You're like, how nerdy you want to get on municipal stuff? But this
Yeah.
is like there are some things in general statute that like the Republicans have forgotten about. And so like one thing you can do is you can designate an area called a blighted area. And that sounds like really bad and yucky. But
Mhm.
essentially it's like this is an area that's substandard and most planners can't preemptively inspect a unit. No go, right? They have to be invited and by somebody. The only way you can basically do that in North Carolina is like you can't inspect a unit between two tenants moving in, which would kind of be the dream situation, right? As the tenant moves out, and then we can send a planner in and say, this is substandard, fix it before the next person. That would make the most sense. We can't do that in North Carolina. They preempted it. But if you designate an area as a blighted area, i.e., one landlord owns a major complex and is not doing a good job and really taking advantage of people, you can actually preemptively go in there and say, we're fining you until you bring this into compliance. And so you can actually be aggressive for once as a local government on taking on these bad actors. And so people don't really use it often, but it's an interesting tool. And you got to weigh your things where it's like, if it's so dilapidated, then you might get in a situation where you might would have to like condemn it. You might not want to do that. That's a displacement issue. But if
Right.
it's some guy that's just like not repairing leaks and just being a scumbag, like, yeah, see
And
what you
has
can
the
do
means to.
and has the means to. Yeah. Like, see
Yeah.
what you can do. Like, be aggressive. Yeah. And then, another thing I did recently, I read general statute when I'm bored. I heard you guys talking on the show about how you guys like to look at North Carolina House bills and how
Yeah.
dorky. I read general statute and other municipal ordinances, and I discovered some municipalities that have this thing called a bird sanctuary ordinance. Have you heard of that?
I am one.
Oh my gosh, Boone was behind. And it's like the General Assembly totally does not remember that they give us the ability to enact bird protections. Like that's absurd. Like they would get
Yeah.
rid of that tomorrow if they even knew it existed. Yeah, like no way. But
Yeah,
it's like,
you if
hey,
you drive into Hendersonville, it's on our city limit signs.
well, we just did that here in Boone because I was reading General Statute. And maybe I was reading Hendersonville like ordinance because I read random Western ones and I was like, bird sanctuary.
Yeah.
So my day job, I'm curious to hear what you do too, and like the balance between that and electeds, but I work in the conservation world and like
Yeah.
really got into conservation because I'm a birder and just love birds and yeah,
Oh my God. Bird sanctuaries are the place for you.
exactly. It's like that is like a dream policy for me.
Do you work for a nonprofit?
I do, yeah. I work for the Endangered Species Coalition, and so we're a national organization that does like some pressure campaigns and education and policy in Congress on defending the Endangered Species Act and other necessary tools to protect wildlife populations. It's a really cool job.
Okay. So
Yeah.
do you get, is there any friction between day job and elected job with that?
No, I tell you, I my work is incredible, and they like the fact that I serve an elected office, and so flex your hours. I mean, if I meet in the morning, I'm going to work that evening, to
Hmm.
catch up on things. But they're great, and I go to DC a good bit to do like small L lobbying. Not like I'm
Yeah.
not like a lobbyist or anything, but I'll take some Georgian constituents to like meet with their senators about um, wildlife, right? And I'm definitely not the best on our team to do that. I have a policy colleague that does that a lot more, but every once in a while I'll go to DC and do something similar or help with a press conference or something. And like this most recent time, I was like, hey guys, like I also want to take a day to talk to my senators and my House rep about Helene recovery. And they were like, please do. You definitely should. And so it's like, they paid for me to go to DC, obviously, because it's work related. But like, I was able to talk to Tom Tillis about like getting this trailer park some support and like talk to
Yes.
Virginia Fox about that. And like, I don't know, I feel so lucky and blessed to have a job that like gets it. And even during Helene, like, I work remote for the most part. I didn't have
Okay.
internet. It's not like I could work. And
Yeah.
we could barely get a hold of them. And when I did, 4 or 5 days after, they were like, Dalton, take all the time you need. Consider us paying, like, they didn't even make me use PTO or vacation. They're like, we want to keep paying you. Consider that our contribution to some Helene recovery. Like, focus 100% of your efforts on recovery
Oh
and
my
helping the
God.
town. It's like, it's an incredible organization.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Where are they
I,
based in DC?
They are, yeah, that's our
Okay.
headquarters. And we're a lean and mean team. I mean, we work with like the Sierra Club. I mean, we run with the big dogs. We're like a Chihuahua with like, a Rottweilers and stuff. Cause like the club and Center for Biological Diversity and all that stuff.
Okay,
They're
yeah.
they're the folks we partner with a lot. But yeah, just incredible folks. And like, yeah, that was like the sweetest thing I think any job has ever done for me. And so I was able to really, work as an elected official, check on businesses. I suited up in gear and worked on recovery effort, bringing supplies to people, like all that. And, knowing basically did that for 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
and knew that my job was like cheering me on while doing it, which was awesome.
Oh man, that's so incredible. Tell us their name again.
Endangered Species Coalition.
Okay,
And we've
cool.
got, and our Instagram is getting better. I'm part of the comp I mean, it's been good, but like I made this great, I helped with this great 4th of July post because the thing we talk about is like, I mean, climate change and everything and is an issue. And Greg Meyer just wrote a Substack about it, about how like we need to be better communicators. People are like progressives and Democrats are moving away from climate change because we're like afraid to communicate it or whatever. And that's
It's
true. And like,
communicating itself for us.
right. And also, like, we need to be messengers of good policy. We shouldn't
Yep.
wait for the public to embrace policy that benefits everybody.
Right.
Like, that's so stupid. And Greg
Right.
was saying that, and I really appreciate it. Um, but I do think, like, the biodiversity and critter work is what I call it, is like a really good way to bridge that gap because it's like, hey, your Trump uncle that, has a bald eagle tattoo and like loves America, like, is that type of guy. The bald eagle exists. The reason you and I could see the bald eagle today because of the Endangered Species Act. Like,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that is a tool to tackle things like climate and stuff broadly, but also to preserve the wildlife. And so it's like, when I talk to conservatives, it's like, yo, like Nixon did the Endangered Species Act. Like,
Yeah, you guys
Republicans were
love birds
conservationists.
too.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you guys like, and I tell people all the time with like, the Teddy Roosevelt platform of the Republican Party. Like, look at that. Like,
Yep.
this is not foreign to you. And so I feel like I can get my foot in the door when I'm talking to somebody that maybe doesn't view themselves as environmentalist or views that as like a word of people that are disconnected through
Hmm.
talking about wildlife. Like, yeah, you want to be able to hunt elk, right? Like, elk used to live in the Appalachian Mountains. We're slowly reintroducing them. They're back in the Smokies, but
Yeah.
our ancestors in Western North Carolina were able to hunt elk, right? And like that population's gone. The Carolina parakeet, what a wonderful tropical bird that used to live in North Carolina. You used to be able to see a
Yeah.
parakeet of all kinds of colors. It's like, that why would we not be supportive of an environment that's home to everybody? And also,
Yeah.
I'm on my soapbox. It's a faith organizing thing too, because I grew up in the church and it's like Noah's Ark, baby. What was that? That was a biodiversity project. Do you know how much easier it would be if God said, hey, just hop on the boat with your wife and just sail off? Do you know how small your boat would have to be? You would be able to build that in an evening. You had to build a huge boat because you believed that every critter had a right to live.
I
You
like
know,
this angle.
it's a biodiversity climate angle. Everything deserves to exist.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. I love finding out about like people. This is like your third passion that we've touched on so far.
Got a lot. Yeah, I don't really know how it all just started. I mean, I got in conservation work because I was on town council doing a lot of conservation policy, and that like kind of built up a background where I could apply for these jobs, like a value that I had. Don't have a formal education in it. And they were like, yeah, we'll take a chance on you because you've worked on environmental policy locally. So
These people are the best.
yeah, they are.
Oh
They're
my
cool.
God.
So I know we only have so much time. What do you do? Have you shared this on Foxfire? If you have, you can be like,
I don't know that I have.
yeah,
I also work in the nonprofit world. So my ed background is in early childhood education. I taught preschool
cool.
for a long time. Um, it doesn't pay enough to live on.
Yeah,
So I got out of the classroom and got into the nonprofit early ed circuit, and I coordinate a program for adolescent parents. We do resource and referral work and some early childhood development education for them at a county-wide nonprofit in Henderson County.
that's awesome. And are they
Yeah,
flexible with your work? I'm sure they're like, yeah, you're fighting the good fight.
they're great. They're so great. A lot of my work is client schedule based.
Yeah,
So, they're a lot of them are in high school. So I can meet them at school, I can meet them after school, I can take them out for lunch. But having a flexible job and being in local government really is I feel very fortunate to have that. I cannot imagine doing this work being in an office 9 to 5 every day.
yeah.
I mean, I'm in an office 9 to 5 a lot, but with some flex time.
It's almost impossible. I mean, it really is as far as like I think of folks that work 9 to 5 and I feel very privileged, but it's like, if you want to be a local elected official and not independently wealthy or retired, like you have to have a flexible job. And like that's also not that many people in the grand scheme of things. Like
Right.
and it's not like you and I are millionaires, right? Like we're just lucky enough to have a job that is like that kind of gets what we're doing lends itself to also what we do professionally and like believes in service and volunteerism and all of these things. But it's like I don't know. I think about that a lot, and as time goes on, I think a lot of municipalities are gonna have to reckon with the fact like if we want enough people to run for office to be able to continue operating government, like we have to explore the relationship we have with paying electeds, but also like when we're conducting business hours. I mean, there's some local
Yeah.
governments that meet at 9 a.m. Boone still meets at 9 a.m. in one meeting, which I take a lot of offense to. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's a struggle. And it's like you're not going to have a lot of people step up to the plate to do that job, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we can point to why. It's very clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. Again, that's something I always think about as well. It's just like, in Boone, you don't make enough serving on town council to pay for an average one bedroom unit. Um, that is
Yeah.
like, that's kind of surreal. Like,
Yeah.
and when I first got elected, and, pointed to that vacancy, I kind of did my life out of order. I'm young. I had just graduated college. I did not have a career at that point. I didn't come from family money. And so I couldn't get a job because if I would apply to jobs and be like, hey, by the way, I might have to skip out on one Wednesday a month and I've
Yeah.
got committees that I've got to, and no place wants to hire you, much less a local nonprofit that fundraises from the
Hmm.
public. And so, I was doing the gig economy for a while and really struggling to be able to serve, skipping meals. I would go to every event I was invited to. Chamber of Commerce is having an event. There's finger food there. I didn't have enough money to buy groceries. I was there out of the ability to survive a little
Yeah.
bit. And
Yeah.
that was, it was a weird experience, but I've since kind of found a way to make it work. So
I think we could probably talk for like another several hours
yeah.
about a way to engage a more like economically diverse population into politics and what a huge difference that would make, because it really does have an impact on the connection that we have to our community.
Yeah.
And we're about to get kicked off again.
Yeah, we don't even, it just says less than a minute, which is ominous.
Yeah,
So,
it really is.
well,
All
I
right.
just thank you. And thanks to Wilco for giving me an excuse to message you and come
The
on.
inn.
But yeah, the
Yeah.
end. But I've wanted to have a chat for a while and it's nice to be able to do it and maybe share some
Likewise.
wisdom with folks. But yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for like going down all the different rabbit holes with me. It's been enlightening and entertaining, and it's much appreciated.
yeah, well, that's, if it was entertaining, I feel like I accomplished my job as a guest. Hopefully, nobody's gonna be like, never have that guy on again or that guy sucks. But we'll wait on the reviews. But yeah, Gina, thank you so much.
Thank
Big
you.
fan. Let me know how to support. If anybody wants to follow me, Dalton for Boone on Instagram.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Foxfire Dispatch. We put out episodes weekly on Fridays, and if you like our content, you can find us at the Foxfire Dispatch on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, and at Foxfire Dispatch on TikTok and Twitter, aka The Bad Place. You can also email us at thefoxfiredispatch@gmail.com with any questions or stories or ideas for bringing about a better South. If there's an election that you're already excited about, we would love to hear about it. So shoot us an email there if you feel so inclined. Until next time, remember that we are who we're waiting for. Now go get in some good trouble.